As I'm sure you understand, going through a faith transition can arouse a powerful range of emotions. So let's talk about how you might have thought about emotions as a Latter-day Saint, and then I want to share some positive strategies for how to respond to these feelings. To begin with, let's identify some perceived messages about emotions that can take shape in a strong religious culture, including Mormonism. First is the idea that emotions originate from some source outside of ourselves. For example, positive feelings come from God, while negative feelings come from Satan. This idea keeps us from taking full responsibility for our emotions. It can lead us to fear or at least to be suspicious of negative emotions. It can put a lot of weight on the need to feel positive emotions because, after all, they're from God, or so we assume. Now, related to this, Latter-day Saints are taught that emotions are evidence of truth. A warm, encouraging, or happy feeling can be interpreted as a witness of truth from the Holy Ghost. Now, to an outsider, the feeling may simply be an emotional response to something a person already desires or expects to be true. But in the LDS person's mind, it's a spiritual attestation of truth. But if we link positive emotions to the truthfulness of our religious paradigm or of any other proposition, we become less likely to question foundational ideas or to be open to meaningful change. This view of emotions is what keeps members from investigating the truth claims of their church, assuming that if any action or thought process gives you a bad feeling, the Holy Ghost has left and Satan is present. But related to this is the assumption in Mormonism that emotions tell us when we're making right or wrong choices. Positive emotions are a confirmation not only of absolute truth, but also of the validity of a particular life decision. And yet sometimes bad choices create positive emotions, at least in the short term, while right choices can engender negative emotions for a variety of reasons. A fourth message common in LDS culture is that intense emotions should be resisted. Only a few peaceful emotions are associated with the Holy Ghost's presence. Other more intense feelings can be restricted because they feel threatening. And so it's not uncommon for religious cultures to reinforce that their members need to deny or to prevent uncomfortable emotions. And yet in practice, this often leads to anxiety, decreased self-awareness, and to the loss of feeling fully alive. In your faith journey, you've probably thought about emotions in ways that have been instilled in you over the years. When you have uncomfortable feelings, it isn't because you're on the wrong path. It's simply the natural result of asking tough questions about the lifestyle and beliefs that have shaped you. Now let me touch on 9 strategies that can help you when your emotions get stirred up. First of all, give yourself permission to feel and acknowledge the full range of emotions. Then identify your emotions. If you can openly name the emotions that you're having, you can be prepared to avoid responding to your feelings in an unconscious or habitual manner. Second, examine your assumptions about feelings. Are the messages that you learned in the LDS Church about emotions, are they true? Are they healthy? For example, third, realize that emotions are neither good or bad in themselves. They're simply the way we're wired to respond to different stimuli. Of course, the choices that we make based on our emotions can have ethical implications, but the emotions themselves just are. Fourth, remember that emotions are temporary. You will likely feel differently before long. So be careful about drawing conclusions or making decisions directly after your emotions are engaged. Then fifth, it's helpful to identify what thoughts are driving any given emotion. After all, you're feeling that emotion for a reason. What is the reason? And as you evaluate the underlying issues, then you're more likely to make a sensible response to what you're feeling. Sixth, as you evaluate what you're feeling and why, consider then what would be an appropriate reaction. For example, do you want your anger to influence you to shout at or demean other people? Or do you want it to lead you toward action that needs to be taken? Then seventh, I encourage you to be patient with yourself. Recovering from being raised in Mormonism can be a long and challenging journey, and it's essential to remember that progress is possible. Take it one day at a time. Celebrate the small victories along the way. With time, with patience, with self-compassion, you can recover from the psychological impact of being raised in that church, in that culture. And then the eighth idea, it's really helpful if you want to seek support, because leaving any religion can be an isolating experience. And so find some people who can encourage you. You may also want to talk to a therapist who specializes in religious trauma, but you got to get some support. And then finally, work out your emotions in the context of God's promises. God promises that He's present, He's active in your life for the good. Psalm 100 verse 5, Psalm 107 verses 8 and 9, Nahum 1:7, Romans 8:28, 1 Peter 5:7, 1 John 4:16. Keep coming back to these promises when your emotions feel out of control. Because God cares about your emotional life. He created you to experience emotions as part of being human. The Bible speaks often about emotions, especially the Psalms, and not just in a negative way. When emotions impel you toward a negative attitude or a course of action, think it through. Evaluate why you're feeling that way. You can react with purpose, not just the way you might have reacted in the past. Thanks for watching today.